Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, it's that time of year where the fake news cycle is almost as important as the actual one. And guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are listening, keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, gives you a 5-star rating, push your notifications on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere, places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, and probably a few other places too. At In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. Well, it's that time of year, boys and girls, where the fake news cycle almost means as much as the actual news cycle, because it is a big election for our friends down in the U.S., and that means our friends at The Daily Show are pumping out content like nobody's business, and obviously they are a machine that does great work and great comedy throughout the years, and multiple time Emmy nominated, multiple time Emmy winning. But we had the unique chance of sitting down and talking with the current director of the show. It was David Paul Meyer, and it's just really got some insight into how the day-to-day of the show works, and just sort of the beats and the differences of it all, because he had to transition between working with someone like Trevor Noah every night to now sort of this rotating ensemble that they have now, and just the dynamics of how they develop content for not only for TV but for streaming, for social media, for YouTube, for everything. It's all kind of changing, and it's amazing to get a professional's insight on that, especially as a content creator myself. Just trying to do what I do, but if you don't watch The Daily Show already, you should, because it's fantastic entertainment, which almost is news, but it's a good thing to have as you dissect sort of the world around you. And David Paul Meyer and the entire team really put out not just quality entertainment, but sort of intellectually engaging entertainment at the same time, which at the end of the day is the important thing. But like I said, enjoy our talk with David Paul Meyer, who is up for an Emmy this year. But as always, watch The Daily Show because it's fun. But enjoy this interview, because honestly, I'm pretty proud of this one. It's one of my favorites in recent memory. Just to get the insight that we get on someone who's producing TV on a daily basis like this, it was pretty fascinating to listen to him talk. So I hope you enjoy the conversation, because I know that I did. All right, well, David, obviously, first off, man, just thank you so much for the time today, and I mean, congratulations on your nomination and your work on the Daily Show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Now, I mean, this is probably a bit of a loaded question, but it's one I've always been curious about, because obviously a lot of your tenure does overlap a bit with Trevor's run, but also there's a lot going on currently with sort of the rotating hosts and John being back. And I've always been kind of curious, because I can imagine when you have someone like Trevor in the seat every night, things are going to run pretty similar. But when there's rotating people in the chair every night, I can imagine while the show is still the same, the format is still basically the same, there's going to be some little slight variations you have to make sort of each time out. Like, would that be a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, definitely. You're actually even kind of underselling it. It can be very different, depending on who's that host that evening. So yeah, I would fully agree with what you said. Because yeah, I mean, you're right. It is the same show. It's, we're a comedy show, political satire, parodying the news. Like, that sort of framework is there, obviously, and a lot of the format, the segments we do are very similar. But I would say the big thing that does vary is obviously the host, and with that comes each person has their own specific performance style
Mm.
and the way that they prepare and the way that they perform. Obviously, the way that they write as well. So the writers have a sort of the same thing that they're doing, I think, but especially I would say performance, cadence, rhythm, the way they speak, the way they deliver a punchline, the way they may improvise or not improvise a little with the script. Those things all very much factor in. And yeah, I really have to pay attention. With Trevor, it's not that I wasn't paying attention with him, but it is very different. He and I have a very long history together. We've worked together now for 16 years. Uh, we had a full shorthand. We knew each other, in terms of how we like to work. I knew his performance style and his rhythm. I direct his stand-up specials as well. So like I really knew him inside and out as a performer. So it is very different. And actually the person who, I have the least experience working with is John,
Yeah.
because all the news team, those correspondents like Jordan and Desi, Michael Costa, Ronnie, Dulce, those folks I had worked with. I used to be, before I was the director of the show, I was on our field team that went out and shot pieces and sketches and stuff. And so I worked with them quite a bit, and I kind of got familiar with their style a little bit. But John is definitely like new for me. And he's a legend, and he has his own legendary style that it's been a fun sort of challenge learning that. But it's definitely like each night you're kind of switching gears a little bit, depending on who's performing.
No, I mean, I've got to ask, when the news broke that John was coming back, albeit just the 1 day a week, was there almost sort of like a snap reaction of oh, had a good run, better go pack my desk. John's people are going to be coming in now. Or was it sort of John very sort of eager to come into the team as it was?
Oh yeah, I mean he was very eager to like, he kind of saw, and he's said it a lot, like in his own interviews and stuff, like the way the show ran, we ran after Trevor left, there was like a year or so of guest hosts, and we uh really figured out and formalized our processes and how we can make a show. And all credit to our showrunner, Jen Flans, who really like steered the ship for us and continues to do so. And so when John came, he was pretty, the first day that we found out, he spoke to us and he was very much like, I'm excited to work here with you all and what you're doing, and like, what Jen's doing. And I trust her and the team that she's built around this place. And that's what I'm excited to, do, and who I'm excited to work with. So it's been cool how he's like come in and like, which I think is like it's a credit to John too, of like someone who has, as you said, he's done it for a long time. He has his way of doing it, but I love the fact that he has been open to, how the show has evolved a little bit separately from him and how he can come in and partner with that. And so I think it's really, really a really cool thing of like, he's Jon Stewart. He brings everything, all the things that we love about him, but he also recognizes the staff, the building, what everybody's doing, and the skill that everybody has. And it makes for like a really fun, creative collaboration together. And I think that's why you've seen it, it's almost electric, I think, the way that it's been since he's been back. And I think it's a credit to like that collaboration, that teaming up of everyone. So,
Can you talk a little bit about just the work that is involved in between when you guys tape, which I can imagine would be like sort of late afternoon, early evening, to when it goes on? Because obviously interviews can go long,
hmm.
performers can go long, things can happen, timing doesn't always work. How do you sort of know what to cut, when to cut? Because I mean, you may have had a segment that you already shot that you have to cut or you have to trim down, or okay, we're gonna have to trim down the interview and put some of it on the web. How much of that do you have to do kind of on the fly? Because obviously with a show like this, it's never going to fit into sort of that, I guess, 22, 23 minute mold of what broadcast TV wants it to be.
Sure. And yeah, I love that question. So the way we do the show though, in terms of how we prep for it each day and the way we produce it and tape it, is we're in a live to tape environment. So we basically treat every show like we're live, and we try to nail everything as if we were live on air. And that's pretty much how we come. Even the way they write it, even in terms of like timing and stuff, they're always timing the show as it's being written and produced that day to that broadcast runtime. That is still sort of what is the guiding force in terms of like how long the show is and what we do. And like I said, it's really just a switch that you flip if you want to be live to air, and then we could be broadcasting. That's the way we prepare. That's the way we tape. But yes, sometimes, when we are live to tape. So between acts, we'll immediately start talking about, and this was even if we were live to air. So during commercial break, basically, there's conversations. Jen, our showrunner, Juman Prang, our one of our co-EP, they go out to the desk. They talk to the host. We're all on our, communication headsets, and we're all immediately kind of having like a little post-mort after every act of like this, maybe we should try, cutting that, see what it looks like. We have our producer, Jeff, who's sort of in the edits, working with our editors who are world-class talented editors. And they kind of will, like, if there's very subtle light tweaks or, oh, maybe we want to cut this for time or whatever, it didn't work the way we wanted to, those conversations are had. And then when we're done taping, we have like another sort of post-mort backstage, essentially, where we kind of review everything that we had discussed through the taping. And then, yeah, I'll go in the edits. I'll look at if there were any edits or whatever that are made. I'll look at them, sign off on them from my side. Like if the interview goes long, which is usually where this thing that you brought up about being over for time happens. And now we're this world of like hybrid broadcast and streaming. So on streaming, you can put the whole interview on, but for broadcast, you have to cut it down, right? So we have those conversations. And then Beth and Shauna, who are our talent producers, work with our editors to like cut the interview down if needed for linear, and they do a great job of making like a nice seamless edit. So if you're watching it on Comedy Central at 11 o'clock, you're still getting the essence of the interview and all the highlights. Or if you're watching it on Paramount Plus the next day, you can see the full extended. But that's kind of how we work with that sort of accordion of runtime that you brought up.
Does that hurt the dynamic, especially between your relationship with Comedy Central and with Paramount Plus in terms of just getting content up there? Because I mean, I can imagine if you've got an interesting interview or if somebody says something, like theoretically, you can have the interview up on YouTube before the show airs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know that we're all under Paramount, so Comedy Central, Paramount Plus, our YouTube channel, it's all Paramount. So I'm not too, I haven't been notified as to otherwise, but they seem pretty happy with the way that we shuffle the content. There's never been oh, you only had that why was that only on Paramount Plus and not on linear? That's never been a thing that's been brought up. I think everybody kind of knows like these are the highlights. And look, a lot of people watch our stuff on streaming, so and yeah, sometimes it does come up on YouTube first. There's like, and that's just part of the strategy for delivering content. Even though I think broadcast television is still sort of like the thing that sort of guides us in terms of like how we tape and how we deliver, we are also not closed off at all. In fact, we embrace the way that you can deliver content on all these different platforms. And I think that's through with our show and up through the network and Paramount as well. Everybody's got to figure out like what's the strategic way to deliver our content, not just on broadcast, not just on streaming on YouTube. It's like, I think at this point now, a lot of entertainment companies just kind of look at that holistically as a suite of like delivery mechanisms to get people, to get eyes on our stuff.
Has that changed the business on your end? Because I mean, like so the traditional idea was, you want the ideal product to go out broadcast and then sort of so on and so forth as it trickles down. But now it really does feel like, as long as people are watching it, just get it out there. Who cares where or when it happens?
It does. So it's funny because my knee jerk was like, no, it hasn't really changed. And I would say it mostly hasn't changed, but there are some certain things. So one big thing, and I love talking about this. It's almost like a joke with Ramin Hediata, who's our head of digital. When you watch TV, Paramount Plus, or even YouTube, or on Comedy Central, you're watching, even now with our Zoom, we're in a 16:9 widescreen format. But the way, the show gets repackaged, for Instagram, and the algorithm that runs everything these days tells us that vertical video is how people prefer it on their phones. And so there's definitely a whole, verticalization process that happens. Um, and I always joke about who this, mysterious verticalizer is, the person who's basically cropping our footage and making it vertical. And it has sort of opened up a new process for us where like I do have communication with Ramin with digital sometimes of like, hey, like when they make it, verticalized. At this point, we've done it enough where everybody kind of knows, but I'll be like, can they kind of crop it this way? Or even the way when I'm planning out shots, I'll think about like, how will that look in a vertical aspect ratio versus a widescreen? That does factor into my thinking sometimes. And look, like you as a director, you can sort of uh get into this thing of like the only way that my footage should be watched is in a cinema on this in a widescreen. You know what I mean? Like I get and like, but I don't work in that. I'm not in that line of directing. I'm not doing feature length films at least. And so like I have to like kind of think about we're a hybrid of all of these different mediums. That's how our show is viewed. And I think at least with my job at the Daily Show, I do have to embrace it. I hope one day that I get an opportunity to be that film director to be like, nope, you must watch my movie on IMAX and that's it. I'm not going to put it anywhere else. But that'll be a separate project. Here, it's very different, and I've grown to honestly really love the challenge of learning how to direct in that way. But yeah, so certainly thinking about how people look at stuff on their phone versus on a TV, it does factor into my job. Yes.
Well, I mean, it's all so related because I mean, even just recently, like I saw the clip of Pete Buttigieg just talking about his, physical relationship to the well-being of the country on my stories and going, "Oh, he was on with John. Let me go pull up the YouTube clip," and then
There
so
you
on.
go. Especially in the interviews, actually, you bring up a good point because a lot of times I'll be like, all right, this feels like if I'm clipping this off, I need to be on the single. I might even pull up the lower third so you see their name come up. I
Right.
mean, obviously with Pete Buttigieg, we know who that is. But like if I'm feeling in the moment that this is going to be a place where, okay, they're going to clip this off, put it on Instagram. Let me just put up who this is in case people aren't sure. So yeah, I've learned to sort of think about that thing that you said right there. It's like
It's
a,
like
a perfect
it's almost like a
encapsulation.
tagline for the
Yeah.
interview. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if I get the person who's, if Dave's watching this on his story and we have that great clip, vertical aspect ratio, and he's like, oh, let me go pull this up, then, done our job, So,
No, I mean, I'm curious because obviously, you've gone to this dance before. What entails going, like, do you get to go to the main show or do you just go to the technical Emmy show? Like what does your Emmy sort of process involve? Because I'm always kind of curious about that.
yeah, no, that's a good question too, because I have a hybrid title actually. I'm a supervising producer and also the director of the show. And obviously with control room directing and calling a show live to tape, doing a line cut, there's very much a technical, there's like sort of like a choreography with the control room and the
Right.
floor and cameras, lighting, all the control room, all the things. And we have our own dance that we do, and we have the best crew in the world who every person at every position is a specialist who is very conscientious of their work and holds themselves to the highest standard. So we have our whole dance that we're working at. I kind of divide my day up. I like to call it upstairs and downstairs. So downstairs is the directing side. I kind of do that second. Once we've kind of got the creative figured out, I come downstairs, I work with the crew, we rehearse, we do all the choreography, we do all the blocking, we figure out how we're going to shoot it, all that stuff. We practice. There's a lot of technical side to that of just calling it, and we review all that stuff. Although there's an art to that too in its own way. But yeah, my upstairs part of the day, which is the first part of my day, is sort of I'm involved with putting the creative together in terms of on the visual side. So I work a lot with I mentioned him earlier. He also works on the post side of it, but one of the producers is Jeff Gousseau, and then also Brittany Radica. They're two people who Brittany's over the graphics department. Jeff works with a lot of like visuals of like if we're taping a split screen interview on location, spoiler alert, they're not actually on location, they're in our
Right.
studio
Right.
on green. So we're working to produce those visual aspects of the show. So I work a lot with it's basically I would mostly with Jen Flans, our showrunner, Brittany and Jeff at the top of the day, and kind of figuring out here's all the creative elements. We have meetings about that. It's going to be this graphic and this background and this lower third and all these things. And then it's like, okay, cool. Now I'm going downstairs. I brief the crew and then we work on executing that.
like just to put a bow on this, I'm kind of curious because it really does feel like this job is something that is ever evolving. Because I mean, even for you guys, and I think of something like, Jordan doing his interviews on the street, but I also think of how we were just talking about sort of the vertical framing, and it was like those play so much better when they're vertically framed on my stories as they do it more of a wide shot.
Mhm.
How does the delivery methods, I guess, these days change how you produce something? Because I mean, I can imagine we may hit a point. I mean, I don't know if this is either a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean, you may be asked to produce a whole show vertically. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say you definitely are thinking about your shot list. And that's the thing I love as a director, thinking about shots, coming up with a shot list, and you know, um, I actually had worked on a project outside the show where they very much the whole premise, they will not be named, but they had a widescreen and a vertical. You got to
Right.
be able to do both. But you know what? That was a great exercise in like getting a head start on doing that. That's every day now. So like you think about it, it's like, oh, okay, like what's my shot list? What's the framing? So like how wide? Maybe I'm just a touch wider so that the vertical crop can include more of the
Right.
composition of the frame that I want. And then what's the coverage? So what's the two shot? And because a lot of times what they'll do, like I said, this mysterious verticalizer they'll take a two shot and they'll sort of cut back and forth between the two sides of it. So I'm thinking about the coverage of going from like a single to like a two shot and like all these different. So I would say it really affects shot listing quite a bit, at least for me. And look, I'm not at the end of the day, I'm probably prioritizing the widescreen still
Right.
because
Right.
again, that's the guiding light still, Paramount Plus, Comedy Central,
Totally.
YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the main where people consume most of it. But I kind of just factor it in a little bit and it's fun. And even the same thing with like graphics and stuff. Or like, so another one, when we do these split screen chats with the on location, when we pick a background, it's like, when it's cropped, like, are you just going to see sky? Or are you going to read? Is the Capitol building going to read a little bit so that they can get, we see when I'm on the phone, they're at the Capitol, or even sometimes we do multiple split screen where we have like three different boxes on the screen, like, and we'll talk about how you can arrange that so that people watching on their phones can still get the gist of that chat. Um, and it kind of works. So it's actually been a fun, and it's honestly been sort of like learn as you go. This sort of like just under the surface, like running thread of how, the job has evolved and that I'm working with digital a lot more now and having at least conversations with them about it. And like sometimes I'll sketch something out and send it to Ramin and be like, hey, this is how they think they should do it. Then he's great. We have a conversation and we send it over. So yeah, that I would say, I think that answers your question,
No,
probably
I think
how
so. I think so.
it
But I mean,
factors in to
just
the producing of it. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, last question. Uh, the Daily Show has such a legacy of being ever so slightly ahead of the curve, not just with sort of the content and the comedy and the social commentary, but with how it looks as well. As someone who's directed so many episodes, how do you manage to sort of slightly keep an eye to the future, especially in such a schedule, which I can imagine is a bit of a meat grinder from the sort of the Monday to Thursday that you guys have to do?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you always have to have a space for getting through the day to day, but
Yeah.
sometimes finding out like also having in parallel these longer term things and time management, learning that and waking up a little bit earlier, to be honest with you. But like one thing we did is that I'm really proud of, right? When we kind of coming out of COVID back into a studio, this was the thing that Trevor had really pushed in terms of like intimacy and trying to make the show look a little more cinematic. We shoot the show with Sony Venice cinema cameras now.
Right.
Um, and they call it cinematic multicam, which I don't really think is accurate. I would say we're more sort of a TV cinema multicam hybrid because it's
Okay.
still very much the thing that I've learned is like everybody's all like, oh, you got to make it look cinematic and shoot, but then you're not doing a television show
Right.
anymore. You're doing a movie, and that can it can feel too like it can just feel a little weird. So we've sort of subtly figured out ways to use these cameras to still very much be like, oh, that's the Daily Show, it's the news parody, but there's just something a little bit on top of that, especially when you'll notice like when we do music where it's like, oh, we can rack focus from this to this and really like, use these new methods that those cameras bring to us to like just lean into those visual jokes a little bit more. Or like, for example, again, I keep going back to these split screen chats, but it's like they're on location, at Kamala's headquarters. Let's tweak, we have all these color correction tools available to us now because of these cameras. And, the guy who's sitting in the control room, Michael, he'll work on making it look like the lighting and the coloring with our lighting designer, George Guntis. They'll kind of work to make it look like, oh no, that looks pretty good. And like all of these things came from this idea of like, all right, obviously we're doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday grind, but like on Friday, what are some meetings? What are some things I can schedule? Who are the people I can talk to? Who are there? These like all this technology and Eric Zeller, our tech manager, is always sort of out there looking up new stuff, pitching me, hey, how about this? Look at this thing. So you find a way to sort of think about that stuff. And again, I'll end on the fact that Jen has always been really empowering of like, she's going to, make sure this, the ship keeps going and she's going to steer it and do that Monday to Thursday show, but she allows us to innovate. And I'm really happy about that because it allows us to do these things like bring some new style of keeping the show into it. And it's been a lot of fun and everybody gets to, it just broadens the creative collaboration across many people who work at the show. And so, yeah, it's a blast.
Well, I love it, man. But I mean, just again, thank you for sparing a few precious Friday minutes for me to talk about all this. And congrats again on the work. And just thanks again for the time today.
Man, yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I really liked your questions. There's definitely several, almost, I think maybe all of them were unique. So it's fun to actually talk to you about the craft. I really liked this interview a lot. And
well,
so
I appreciate that, man. That's what I try to do. So, but again, thank you for that, and just thank you for the work. And just, well, I'll let you get back to work, but maybe go for a walk. It's Friday. You've got to enjoy it.
I'll take a little downtime, yeah. But hey, man, thanks again, and it's a pleasure meeting you, and all the best with everything.
Likewise, man. You too.
All right, have a good one.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.